Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. A peer-to-peer sex education program at a public high school in California, funded by taxpayers nationwide, may be on the chopping block after President Donald Trump signed an executive order prohibiting federal funds from going toward what he called gender ideology indoctrination for K-12 students. Joining me with more on this story is Chalkboard News editor Brennan Clary. Brennan, tell us about this program.
Yeah, so I've written about this before. This is a health clinic at Berkeley High School in Berkeley, California. And there are two volunteers or sex educators, or they have a couple of different titles, but they basically work for a federal agency called AmeriCorps. And there's specific branches of AmeriCorps. And this is the Bay Area Youth Advisory Council, I think, BAYAC. So it's like a branch of this federal government agency that's focused on service and volunteerism, but they are paid. So these are federally funded positions at Berkeley High School's sex clinic, like health clinic. So like they have like a lot of different kinds of sex ed materials that they're working on. They also direct students to go and get different kinds of procedures or like different kinds of health benefits from the Berkeley High School health clinic. So it is and the program is called Sexual Health Information from Teens, or SHIFT. And so the idea is you have students teach other students about these sex ed topics, because maybe they would trust a student over an adult, and they're distilling this information. And the presentations are on birth control methods and also sexually transmitted infections. So like these are not like bad things to teach students about. And I think these are mostly most of these are in regular sex ed courses. They're not even comprehensive sex ed courses. Like a lot of these topics, come up in health classes or sex ed classes, in middle school and high school. Like this is not that's not the sort of problem in terms of what Trump has said would count as indoctrination. But what the health educators, or what the leaders from the AmeriCorps program have told students who are in the program, the student leaders. So there's students who are part of the SHIFT program, and they're paid to facilitate these presentations, to talk to other students and to give these kinds of talks. And those students get kind of additional information about different sex ed topics. So they'll have like weekly meetings where they discuss, here's how to present, here's how to discuss these things. And in those, there were some slides that included a depiction of what's called the gender unicorn, which shows how gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, physical attraction, and emotional attraction can all be any combination of male, female, or other. So one thing that the slide specifically says is sex does not equal gender. Another slide said too that just like assigned female at birth, or AFAB, and assigned male at birth, or AMAB anatomy, intersex people can identify as any gender. And so Trump signed an executive order that prohibited gender ideology. So or like radical gender ideology, or what it called indoctrination. And it described that as, gender ideology, quote, replaces the biological category of sex with an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity, permitting the false claim that males can identify as and thus become women, and vice versa, and requiring all institutions of society to regard this false claim as true, the executive order reads. Gender ideology includes the idea that there is a vast spectrum of genders that are disconnected from one's sex, the executive order continues. So we have the Trump administration directly targeting this kind of ideology. We also have, the Department of Government Efficiency is going through a lot of different kinds of agencies and sort of listing here's where they are stepping away from that, or where they have stepped away from the Trump administration goals, or, just different kinds of, taxpayer funds going to initiatives that maybe are not successful. And so it's just a very interesting, I think, illustration of how the Trump administration's sort of prohibitions, or how its implementation might work. So there's nothing to indicate that this is on the chopping block yet, but the fact that they have specifically prohibited that kind of language, and that these are employees, that's going to maybe get people worked up in a county or in an area like Berkeley, California, right? Where it does, for the most part, I think there's a lot of more progressive or more left-leaning families and students, and like there's not really a lot of people who are maybe concerned about this kind of ideology. But then if you have somebody at the federal level saying like, look, these are federal funds and we can pull those because they're saying something that we have prohibited, and because we have the power to do so, that might get people kind of worked up. That might get a lot of emotional investment into that. So I think that's a very interesting sort of thing. Another thing too is we kind of got it clear because of a Freedom of Information Act request or public records request. We found out that there were 14 students who facilitated 60 presentations on those topics to other students. So on birth control and STIs. For approximately 1,500 students, which is about half of Berkeley High School. So this does have like a profound effect in terms of, these students are reaching about half of Berkeley High School, according to Berkeley High School's estimates. And it's also notable too that the reporting we've done on this before shows that parents it's not clear whether parents can actually access that information from those student-led presentations on sex ed, because it's student-created work. So there is a caveat in the handbook from Berkeley High School that says parents have the right to review sex ed. But when I asked for those presentations, they said you can't have those because they're student-created. So they're protected by federal and state law about student privacy. So it's a very interesting conundrum, and the school has decided not to engage or not to respond, and has blown me off in repeated requests for comment about clarifying that. And so I think that that's like a very interesting sort of intersection too of this is something that parents by its own policy have the right to review, but then you also have this peer-to-peer program, which kind of obfuscates it a little bit. Like it's not very clear exactly how much you can examine that material because it was student created. So it's a very interesting sort of conundrum, and there's like these bigger ideological issues at play, and it's a very big question mark as to whether the funding will continue for this program.
Well, Brandon, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.